Welcome, guys, to this masterclass, webinar, hangout session, whatever you want to call it, around coaching from intuition, presence, and principles, which really just means how can you be yourself and make a difference? So that's the simplicity that we like to work from as what we call resonance-based coaches. We like to find out who we are. We've done the work on ourselves to discover a deep essence of who we are, and we try to get in resonance with the client and with who they truly are, and then together magic happens. And that's the most etherical and abstract way of talking about it. But really, if you really look at where miracles occur, it's from this space within us that has infinite possibilities, and that is the true self. And that is who we really are. We are an infinite possibility, not defined beyond the definitions that we have for ourselves. So when people come to us and they want to break through, they're really asking, can you help me stop concluding things about me that are limiting my infinite self? And Chris and I have ways and a certain understanding that allows people to do that very quickly. But it's not the kind of way that you might think about, which is, okay, you do this, you do ABC. It's not an ABC. It's not a strategy. It's not a technique. It's not, let's get them to think about their thoughts. Okay. And then move their eyes left and right and then swish this thing. It's not a technique like NLP, which both Chris and I are trained, master practice. Chris is actually a trainer in NLP. So we come from that world. We're not ignorant to the world of techniques. But what we discovered through many years and many different sessions, one-on-one sessions, is that there's nothing more powerful than just allowing yourself to really just be who you are, not trying to be someone that your client would approve of or that your mother would approve of and call a good boy. That we all kind of carry that little desire to be a good person with us, which makes us want to fit into a certain role or fit into a certain set of behaviors and thoughts and ideas. And that limits our ability to show up and really say what's needed. And that limits our ability to show up and hear what's being said. And so we want to be able to strip that all away and just show up and be our authentic self. And authentic self is not limited. Our authentic self can hear beyond the words into the soul and into the heart of the person in front of us. And in the process of being heard at that depth and that level, they wake up to their true self. So it is actually something that's so simple, but it's not something that you can do. So you have to unlearn all the different ideas about how coaching works in order to show up and really be present. Because if you have a lot of ideas in your head, which technique should I use here? Okay, I need to follow what they say so I can analyze their thinking. And I need to, I can discover, I'm going to break down what kind of thought pattern they have or what kind of belief they have. You can learn to just listen, not listen for something in particular, but just to be listening, to become the very essence of listening. And in that, certain things will stand out and you'll speak to them. And that is actually the most powerful way you can show up with a person. It took me a decade. It took me first working in the healing realm with different modalities and coming to a point where I would just put my hand on someone and I would drop into this place where there was nothing and I would see stuff. And I would see them as a 14-year-old girl going through kind of a traumatic incident. And I would say that to them and say, yeah, that happened. I was like, wow, where is this information coming from? Because she's not speaking, my hand's on her and my eyes are closed. So how does that happen that I'm picking up all this information? What's that? Well, that's a different kind of listening, right? That's an intuitive listening beyond logic. Like that's not logically possible. I could basically, it's like, psychic powers, if you will, but it's something that all of us are capable of. We're able to pick up information beyond our normal senses. I'm sure you guys have gone into a place before and you felt the chills. You sensed danger. You met someone and you go, oh, that person creeped me out. And you went in the opposite direction. Well, that's picking up information that's beyond the surface, picking up a sense of vibrational information that is beyond your own ability to understand. But you're trusting that. You're trusting that, and you're allowing it to guide you and move you in a direction that you're following that intuitive path without knowing where it's going to go. The conscious mind guides and directs the conversation. The intuitive mind follows and moves with, follows and flows. Now, sometimes you need to do one, and sometimes you need to do the other, right? Sometimes you need to follow and flow where the client wants to go, because it's going to lead you to that place where they can have the breakthrough. And then at a certain point, you need to guide and direct them out of their thinking, right? So you need both. But a lot of people, when they coach, where they coach from is they build up their confidence and certainty based on what they know, right? I know how to do this technique. I know this concept about how this thing works. They come from a place of, I'm only safe in this conversation if it's something that I know how to do. How many coaches can honestly say that if you show up in a room with 100 people and you don't know what to do, you would feel confident in your ability to find out in the moment exactly what's needed from you? So that could mean you're asked to go up and give a speech for 10 minutes and you have nothing prepared. Would you feel comfortable? I used to do this a lot. I used to do something called satsangs, presentations where you have no plan and you speak the truth in the moment. I have no problem speaking about anything in the moment. And, I don't question what comes to my mind and what wants to be spoken. And I don't have judgments on it, and that that's a superpower when we're talking about intuitive coaching, is really not doubting and second guessing what comes to mind, because that's the little voice that keeps you safe. That's the voice that keeps you in your old habits and stuck in the way that you show up. I was just talking with a client actually recently, and she said to me, I've had a difficult time knowing how to weave in the principles into my practice, because she's a TCM practitioner, a Chinese doctor. And she said, but just the other day, this person was talking, and I decided that I was going to share what I saw. I just saw that she was experiencing something kind of that wasn't happening, and I just decided to share that something from my experience that was like that. And this woman had a profound insight. And she said, I've been seeing a psychologist for this for weeks. And just this little 5 minutes of conversation has been more helpful than the whole time I've been going to the psychologist. All we do is talk about kind of the problem. And this is a person who second guessed her ability to make a difference, to make an impact. Meanwhile, that voice, which has just been saying, look, just share this. Don't worry about how looking good or explaining it in the right way, just speak. That little voice that said, no, you don't know it well enough yet. No, you don't know how to explain it. Don't bother. You're going to make a fool of yourself. No, it's not, you don't understand this enough to really make a difference. Like that voice that got in her way kept her from just speaking her truth for 4 months. And the interesting thing is, the moment she spoke her truth, the person sitting in front of her had a profound awakening. And she had a profound awakening of how much she has been holding herself back just because of this little voice that says, no, you don't know enough. Well, that's the enemy of intuition, the voice that knows. the mind that knows. It's the enemy of intuition, because intuition literally means to come to some level of understanding that you can't logically get to. How would I logically be able to put my hand on someone and know what happened to them when they were 15? Logically, I would have to ask them, so did anything happen to you in your teens? You know, I would have to go through a series of processes and steps. But the intuitive path is you allow a deeper wisdom to just tell you the answer beyond your own logic. You bypass what makes sense. And you're left with oftentimes things that don't make sense. And you start to question them because they're so seemingly irrelevant or seemingly absurd that you go, how could that be something worth sharing? When you coach from that place, your results will skyrocket. You will have access to your deeper self, and you will not be limiting it with your personal self-concept and logic. And that is a big explosion on who can show up, on the infinite self showing up versus the limited self that knows this and knows that little piece of information and can be helpful because of what they know. Yes, of course, everyone has their expertise. And expertise is not information that you gather and you can regurgitate. Expertise means, what do you know about life that works? What do you know about life? What have you figured out about life? What have you learned through your own experience and become wise about in terms of how life works? That's your expertise. Your expertise is not the book you wrote about the experience. It's the experience that resounds in your heart. It's the frequency that you understand that dimension of life. And you get to share that. You don't have to share it through words and explanations. You can share it through presence. You can share it through transmission. You can show who you're being and not need to do as much. It's a completely different way of showing up that we're talking about. It's not just related to coaching, it's about life. What would it be like for you? Just type in the chat, imagine how your life would be different. I want you to try this on. If you could simply show up, be yourself, and make a profound difference and know that it's enough. How would your life be different if you could get rid of all the other noise of needing to do the right thing or needing to say the right thing or not, speaking out of turn? Just if you could just show up. Yeah, Tandra, it sounds too fairy tale-ish. Yeah, how does that land for you? Maybe it's too edgy. Maybe it's a little bit too absurd. That you can just be yourself, and that's enough. Literally, that you don't need to carry anything on your mind. You don't need to be the expert or a smart person with a degree. You can literally just show up, be yourself, and make a difference for anyone that you speak to. How would your life be different? What would change if you were able to do that? And what I'm asking you to do is explore what's beyond the current limitations and the beliefs that you have to do something to be of value. So it's probably hard to try on if that's how you've been experiencing your life. But here's something from Nina. It would be awesome to just be me and no self-judgment on what I do or say. Right? No self-judgment, just acceptance of what's coming up and what's true for you. Not a need to fit in. It's not that you're creating conflict by sharing your truth when other people are triggered. There's no self-judgment, and there's no judgment on others either. What a beautiful way to just show up. How would you feel? How would you feel inside of yourself if you were showing up with no self-judgment? What would your day be like? Tamber said, no work-life balance, it would just be life. In terms of the first question, what would that do for you? It'd be just no work-life balance, it would just be life. Everything would just be life. Yeah, that's a wonderful way of saying it. You're just living. There's no segregation of this is my work, this is my relationship, this person I love, that person I don't. You're just showing up as life. You just get to be alive. You get to enjoy it. And there's no judgment on what comes through you. That's really what coaching, or living in this case, from presence, intuition, and principles is like. You're just alive. There's nothing specific that you have to do. You don't base your value on what you do. It comes from within. It comes from the absence of self-judgment, which ultimately allows for self-love. And also self-expression. How many of you limit your expression because you judge yourself? Anyone? So what would life be without self-judgment? Think about that. Think about the possibilities that just the absence of self-judgment would create in your life. You know, that the thoughts, oh, I wonder if I'm doing this right. Oh, am I making a difference? Okay, what do I have to remember here to get them to have a breakthrough? And think about, as a coach, how much that self-judgmental voice goes on in your head that gets in the way of you just showing up and listening and saying what comes to mind. Your self-expression is limited because of the degree of self-judgment. And I got news for you. Truth sometimes triggers people. So when you say what comes up for you, which is unfiltered, intuitively given to you as a gift directly from your true self, in service to the person in front of you, and you say that, and that does something within them, it stirs something up within them. That's about them. And that's actually service. That can be service when you speak truth, even though it can be uncomfortable to watch them go through their own inner conflict as they're wrestling with that denial that's keeping this truth from themselves and their own self-judgment on what it means about them to be doing and living the way that they're living. But how many of you suppress your own self-expression out of the fear that it's going to offend someone? Anyone stop just living because you're afraid you're going to offend someone? Anyone stop living your life? Me? I do that. That's, if you look at it, it's not really a nice way to live. That my self-expression is dependent on someone else's touchiness or someone else's reactions. That I don't say what is authentically true for me because someone else has a problem with what I'm saying. Now again, there's a difference between speaking truth without caring and considering about the person's feelings, and speaking truth and understanding that how you say something can potentially make a person more receptive to it than other ways of saying it. So I'm not saying that you say whatever you want and don't give an F. I'm just saying that why live a life of self-suppression to not offend others when you could live a life of truth and speak in a way that might offend someone, but you're doing it from a loving place? What's the need to suppress your truth, right? And that's what we're talking about, is how can you show up and be yourself? And again, that means to not limit your self-expression. How can you just show up and be yourself and have that be enough and have that make a difference? No techniques, no strategies, just being you and speaking to someone being them. So what would that be like if your practice could transform from a thing of doing and a thing of strategies and a thing of, using the latest technique, to just showing up and being yourself and speaking what's true in the moment and making a difference? What would happen in your practice? Consider that. And how would that feel different? And you know what the beautiful thing is? This is not even about coaching. It's about living. Coaching is one expression of your life if you're a coach, but it's about how you live without suppressing your own expression. How do you live your life? How do you choose to live? And again, if you're afraid of what people are going to think, if you're afraid of offending others by speaking what's true for you, then you're not showing up as yourself, and you're not showing up as the limitless self that you have access to. And then you're not going to call that out in another person. So, any questions, comments, and also, Chris, we can talk about this later. But we also have an understanding of what creates results for people, which is not technique based, which is not about some strategy or some kind of attitude or something like that. So we can talk about kind of how that works. Heidi said, I think it's a total system upgrade to the essence of life. Hey, Tammy, nice to see you too. Yeah, it's a total upgrade, because you stop living your life in fear of hurting and offending other people, and you start living a life which is really independent of other people's reactions, which is the life that we want to live anyway, right? We don't want to be controlled by how people react to us. We want to live, and we want to be able to honor what this life is wanting to express, instead of being controlled and manipulated into being something that other people will accept. How many people would just, how simple would it be if you could just be yourself in every moment? Without the fear that you're doing it wrong, without the fear, like, how easy would life be? You just get to show up. No expectations on yourself, no job descriptions, no requirements, no roles. Just get to be yourself. And that can express itself in infinite ways with different people. And guess what? What people think about you doesn't mean anything. It's the form of expression they see in that moment, and that's their assumptions and conclusions that they make. Has nothing to do with who you are. Yeah, Temi, a non-judgmental life, absolutely. And Nina said, by being able to be intuitive with clients, it would create a space where they can begin to tap into their own intuition. Absolutely. That's exactly it. And that's where the major breakthroughs happen, is when they tap into their own wisdom, their own intuition, and they see something from within, coming from their true self, from the depths of their soul. And again, for them to not judge what comes allows them to act upon it, right? Because how many times have you had something come to mind and you thought, well, that's too crazy of an idea. That's too crazy of an idea. That's not for me. who's the real you? Is it the one that has the crazy idea or the one that questions it? Depends which one you identify with. The one that questions it will keep you safe, keep you contained, keep you where you are. The one that identifies with the crazy idea will explore it and take you out of the box. So it's your choice which kind of life that you want to live. But I can tell you, a created life is not one that is living inside of a box. A created life is one that's constantly expanding, constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly creating new things. All right, well, why don't we take a moment and check in. What are some of the insights that you guys are getting? And then I'll hand it off to Chris to move in whichever direction he thinks is best for this call. So what are some of the things that you guys are taking away from this? So what's changing in the way that you've been looking at coaching or the way that you've been looking at life that is helpful? And if there's nothing, we'll move on. And if anything comes to mind, feel free to share it as we go. So why don't you take it away, Chris? I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kai. Beautifully shared. And it's interesting because as I was listening to Kai, I found myself drifting slightly out of the present moment at times, thinking, well, what am I going to share next? What am I going to share next? And then I bring myself back to, no, I'm just going to be present and trust my intuition in the moment that I'll know what I'm going to share. So one of the beautiful things about what I'm learning through coaching is ultimately, it doesn't matter whether I'm on a live training like this or whether I'm with my partner, I'm sensing where in life am I not being present? Where am I not being fully present to what's in front of me? And what I mean by that is I was listening to a training from one of our mentors who's actually been along to our previous trainings. He was actually featured as one of our guests in Project Revolution called George Pransky. And George was talking about listening. And what George was saying about listening was, if you're actually thinking while someone else is talking, you're not actually listening. You're actually just thinking. So you're not receptive to getting what someone's sharing. You're just creating your own story and projecting your own ideas on top of what's being said. So I think one of the biggest lessons that I've discovered when it comes to being present is the clue is in the word present. Presence is pre-sense. It is the awareness that occurs before our senses have kicked in. It is the ability to really intuit and perceive what's happening and being able to be aware of what's going on before we've added the layers of meaning, before we've added our own projections and our ideas on top of life. So for me, that's my goal in life, is to be more present, not just as a coach, but in life. So life is my training ground. My mission is every single moment throughout my day, I'm learning how to be a better coach from learning how to be more present, not just to my partner, but to my friends and to my family, to the complete stranger that I go down to the fruit market and buy fruit from. You know, this is not a thing that only just gets switched on when I'm coaching my clients. This is a living embodiment of being present to life. So I've now learnt to switch off my thinking when I'm listening to someone, so that there's a void. I'm like a sponge. I'm literally like absorbing everything. And I'm not absorbing it from the point of view of believing that it's true. I'm absorbing from the point of view of, I want to get that information and I want to be present to it And then once I've absorbed that information, I can then use my wisdom to assess, does that seem like it matches up with reality? For a classic example of your clients will be sharing with you beliefs that they've got. They might be sharing a feeling with you. And when a client shares a belief with me, I don't dismiss it or agree with it. I accept that that's the belief that they have, and I can now be with that belief, and I can now experience what it would be like to be them. So it's like I now am able to put on the goggles that my clients are wearing, and I can be present to more of the reality that they're experiencing. So it's like a cheat code that I'm able to sort of open the door in their mind and jump into their experience and be present to what they're experiencing, not just what their beliefs are, but also what they're feeling. So I think that's really another important ability as a coach, is recognize we're listening for the feeling that our clients are in. We're sensing how is my client feeling? I was having a coaching session with a client the other day, and he was sharing some of the challenges he's been having in his life. And he was a little bit frustrated that he wasn't getting it. Now, you're going to have clients that are going to, show up to a session and they're going to be disappointed that they haven't got what they were hoping for. Can any of you guys relate to either having a session with a client before and you're working to create a breakthrough and it doesn't quite happen the way that they want it to, and they kind of get a bit disappointed? I'm like, yeah, I just haven't got it yet. Can anyone relate to that? I'm going to see a show of hands if anyone can relate to. Yeah, it happens. A client has an expectation about what they should get, and their disappointment can prevent them from being present. And so what I sensed with my client was that he had expectations. He had this heavy feeling. And I sensed, like, I had no idea where this was coming from, but I just started speaking, like as Sky was saying before, I just trusted my intuition. I didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth, but I sensed there was something on his side that was getting in the way of him creating results. And I just sensed that he didn't understand what listening was. He didn't know what presence was. Like, it was a foreign concept to him to truly understand that listening is not you thinking over the top of someone else. Listening is just being completely open and receptive to take on and to absorb what's taking place in front of him. So this was a completely new thing for him. It blew his mind. He literally had a moment of, kind of head bobble, eyes blink, kind of almost like the system was rebooting. And he had no idea that he didn't even know what presence or listening was. It was a completely new, almost like a new language. And so I sensed that he didn't have the same presence that I had. I sensed that there was something missing. And it turned out he didn't really understand listening. He didn't understand what presence was. He was just judging, projecting, internal dialogue, commentary, literally talking over the top of me the whole time I was coaching him. Now, as a coach, that's a really, really important intuitive ability to know if your client is not present or not receptive to you. Because if your client isn't receptive to you, they're not going to be available to the truth that you're sharing with them. They're not going to be receptive to really taking on a different perspective. Their ability to be transformed is going to be compromised because they're now running their thinking systems over the top of what you're saying. Right. So this is incredibly important. This is the core of what Kai and I teach and train and educate our coaches in, is when a client is in a state of receptivity, that's when the magic happens. That's when all the magic happens. When a client is in a state of connection, of receptivity, when they feel safe within themselves, when they feel so at home within themselves and they don't feel judged by you, they feel like they can reveal all of their life's biggest fears in front of you. And they know that they can just release all that and they don't need to figure it out in their head. You'll find that your capability and your power as a coach goes up exponentially. And I had no idea that this was even a thing. Back in the days when I did my NLP training, they were training us on all the techniques. And great, if your client has a phobia, you turn to page 50. And if your client has this, turn. So I was coaching from a manual. I wasn't paying attention to things like, is my client present? Does my client understand listening? What are my client's biggest fears that they might be projecting onto me as a coach? So all these things are really, really important. to be aware of before you even think about what comes out of your mouth or what technique or what question you're going to ask. It's creating the conditions inside the relationship from your beingness and from your ability to observe what's even going on that makes so much difference to the success of the coaching journey. So since I've realized this, it's funny because I go back to looking at some of the coaching relationships that I've had with some of my clients before, and it's now obvious. Oh, my clients probably weren't getting the results that they wanted because they weren't receptive. They weren't open. They weren't listening. They didn't even know that this was a thing. So I realized that one of the most important things that I can teach my clients is what presence is, what listening is, what being available is. And so the only way that we can get to that point is to be present with ourselves, and for us to understand what presence is, for us to understand what listening is, because if we don't understand that, how can we possibly give it away to our clients? So this is a superpower of the transformational coach, is really showing up with nothing. Showing up with nothing, which gives us access to everything. Because when you show up with nothing, all those perceptual filters that might have been blocking that deeper level of wisdom, when you show up as nothing, with nothing on your mind, you are far more receptive to absorb. And so some of the things that get in the way of us being receptive as a coach, or us being present, are concerns like, am I enough? Like, am I going to be good enough for this client? Any of you guys relate to having a thought like that? Am I doing a good job here? Are they even getting anything from this? I would say probably for the first 3 years of my journey, unconsciously, that was my experience of coaching. I was on edge. I was tense. I was feeling, I hope they get something from this. I hope this thing works. And I was so judgmental of myself, to the point where I wasn't allowing myself to be relaxed. I wasn't allowing myself to be creative. I completely shut down all my creativity. And I was coaching from a manual. I was coaching from a list of questions and a list of techniques that someone else said was the right thing to do. And what I've since realized was all those techniques sometimes work, they're just a fraction of what's on offer when it comes to really being transformative by having access to the whole entire range of transformative abilities, which for me, for example, a lot of the most transformative moments I've had with my clients are in pure silence. Like literally just allowing the space of silence and presence, and a client giving them enough time and space and to fully consider something that they've never even considered before. And that's one of the things I recommend that you play around with, is allowing for spaciousness, allowing for silence. You'll notice that some of your clients are going to want to speak so quickly and just talk and get their story out, but they've never given themselves a chance to just pause and be reflective. And when a client has an opportunity to pause and to slow down and to go inward, they'll allow themselves to touch a deeper space within themselves, the true self. And in a heartbeat, all of the problems around them can literally dissipate and dissolve, because they realize that the bigger picture, or the greater truth in their life, is that they are beyond any of their problems. They are far more capable than they realize, and that everything that they're experiencing is form. It's not the true self. Any of the emotions, any of the experiences, any of the memories that they've had aren't actually their true being. Their true being comes before all of that came into existence. The true self, when you came into this world, when you were born, you didn't have the ideas and beliefs and opinions and conclusions. There was a blank canvas. And then at some point there was this becoming someone. So what we're looking to do in this transformative conversation is allowing a client to reflect on themselves, to unbecome, to subtract and to remove and to purify those ideas and thoughts and beliefs that were getting in the way of them realizing who they truly were. So yeah, this thought of, am I enough? The antidote to that, I believe, is realizing that in a coaching conversation, there are no expectations. If you have any expectations around a coaching conversation, dump them. That might sound kind of strange, but when you let go of your expectations, let go of your need to get anything from the session, you free up all of your capacity to be present, to create results. So my intention now in a coaching session is, number one, be present, deeply listen, and show up as the most authentic version of myself. And if I focus on just doing those things and speaking what I know to be true and creating the conditions where a client feels safe and connected and receptive, I know that that is going to maximize the probability of us getting results in the session. So I'm not focusing on the result. I'm focusing on the beingness that's going to produce that process that leads to the result. So if all my attention is on the result, let's got to get the result, get the result, get the result. I'm not present to, there is a process of how I need to be in the moment that's going to create that result. So as Sadhguru says, don't water the fruit, water the roots. In the coaching session, the nourishment of what's going to be doing the heavy lifting is presence, intuition, creating connection, really being with our client and embodying that. And that's going to be a journey. That's not just a click your fingers and you're there. That's a journey that's taken me the best part of now 6 years I've been in this industry. And I'm just now starting to get to the good stuff. So I want to help you, save you potentially a lot of years of your life focusing in the wrong direction. And when you orientate yourself in the direction of presence, intuition, listening, your beingness, you'll be far more powerful than you could ever have realized. So that's what I've come to realize that helps us create results. That's why presence is so important. And I can see there's a couple of questions here. We've got one from Temi. With the situation of things in life now, how do you plan for the future? Okay, well, that's a good one. I generally tend to not do much planning for the future as much as I used to do. I used to be very much thinking, 10 moves ahead and years ahead. And now what I've realized is, yes, I'm going to have an awareness of what I want to create. However, the greatest return on investment for what's going to create my future is who I am being in this moment. So it's my beingness right now. Like, I don't have access to the future. If I want to have a chance of influencing the future, my only access point to that is who I'm being in this moment. So my focus is less about an idea. Like, the future is just a concept. It doesn't actually exist. So the only thing that exists is right now. And I wanted to use the power of this moment to orientate myself in the direction. So I use future thinking to set the course, to set my orientation. And once I have enough clarity on that, I'm now back in this moment creating. So I trust that's a great question. That's probably a whole nother training for another time. And yeah, Nina, as kids, we are not taught to trust our intuition. Yeah, it's not really a thing that's spoken about. Yeah, the topic of intuition. Yeah, some of these topics, all of these topics that we're sharing today, these are just fundamental principles for living, for beautiful living. Yet they're not taught at school. So hence why the reason why we're teaching this now and we're all learning this now is because we didn't get it when we were kids. And that's okay. That's the journey that we're all on. And thank you, Tanvir. I literally feel like I'm cheating, learning off you guys. Absolutely. We're wanting to give you the cheat codes. This is one of the greatest gifts of coaching, is we're all giving our clients the cheat codes that we've spent a lot of hard yards and a lot of time and a lot of maybe traumatic moments or moments of despair, moments of feel like we're going crazy. And then the greatest gift we can give to our clients is we've integrated that wisdom and we can hand that on and pass it on to our clients to prevent them from making the same mistakes and potentially saving them decades, if not their whole entire life, of heading in the wrong direction, looking for something that's just not there. And a lot of people are looking out there in the world for the answer. They're looking for a guru, or they're looking for the quick fix or the secret elixir. And the truth is, it's under our nose. The place that we're really looking is within. That's it. This is the place that we need to point to. This is the only place that I'm pointing to when I'm when I'm coaching a client. And when I'm talking to you right now is I'm getting you to look within. I'm just pointing to what's true that you can only see from within yourself. So it's not about what I think, it's just about pointing at the truth. It's about sharing what we understand to be true and letting a client see that for themselves. And no expectations. A client may or may not see that. They may see it in the session. They may see it after the session. I've had plenty of clients where I've had coaching sessions with the clients and I thought, I was judging myself. I thought my client didn't get what I wanted. And then a day later, 24 hours later, I get a message from the client saying, oh my God, I had the most incredible breakthrough. My life looks so different. And I'm like, wow, okay. It's a good reminder to know that what's happening in a session is sometimes planting a seed that is going to grow fruit maybe 24 hours later, 24 days later, maybe 24 years later. You'll never know. But all you have to do is just trust in this moment and just trust that you're delivering what is in the best capacity of your wisdom in that moment. That's all you can do. And there's a huge amount of compassion that's required in this process to really show up as that. So I trust that helps. And Temi, future thinking, but created in the moment. Yes, absolutely. That's a great way of summarizing it. Future thinking, be aware of what your intention is, live with intention, have an idea about what you want to create, have clarity, and then realize that the thing that's going to create that is only ever in the now. As cliche as it is, the now is all we have, and how we're using the now is the mastery of life. Nina, do you ask your client what their expectations of the outcome for each session? Yeah, I do. So when I'm coaching a client, I'll ask them what's their intention. Like I'll get them to bring something that's that they feel like would be valuable. I'll typically ask them something like, what would be a great outcome for you today? What would you like to focus on? So I'll always co-create an intention with my client. Now, sometimes my client might share something that I feel like is maybe not the most important thing in their life. Like my client might say, you know what, I'm feeling like I'm a little bit lazy with my exercise. And I might go, well, okay, fair enough. But is that the most important thing going on in all of your life? And I might go, oh, actually, yeah, good point. My relationship needs a lot of work right now. In fact, I feel really dissatisfied with my career. Actually, you're right. There's a whole lot of other more important projects in my life than that. Fair point, right? So sometimes I'll challenge my clients on just want to check in. Like, I'm happy to help you with that, but I just want to check in because what I've been noticing is that there's some other maybe more important issues in your life right now that I think would be much more like greater return on investment. What do you reckon? And then, so I'm not attached to it, but I will use my intuition to just check in and say, are you sure? Like, I want to challenge you on that one. So part of the role of a coach is to challenge our clients, like absolutely challenging. And sometimes I'll kind of like poke and prod, and I'll kind of be a little bit almost antagonistic in a way to kind of provoke them to think a bit differently. And the most important part about that is doing it in a way that's soft, that shows that we care about someone. And so challenge your client in a very, very caring and compassionate way, and you'll get the best out of it. That's what I've experienced. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then once we've co-created an intention, we'll work towards that. And at any point, we might diverge away from that because we find something better. That's the great thing, is my client might want one thing, and a lot of the time my client wants one thing, and then halfway through, like in the case before I mentioned with my other client, we were working on a problem of not being good enough or not being worthy or something else, but then I realized that he didn't understand listening and he didn't understand presence, right? So if he couldn't be present to himself, if he didn't understand how to listen to himself or be present to himself or be present to the people around him or even listen to anyone around him, well, he's probably going to feel disconnected from life. So he hasn't even got an access point to getting the awareness to solve his problem. So I just sensed, actually, I think this is more at the core of what we need to work on. So I just needed to trust that in the moment. So that's just an example of, again, intuition in the moment might take you in a different direction where you discover an even greater outcome for a client session that they had no awareness of and you had no awareness of. That's also perfect. So I trust that helps. I trust that answers that question. But thank you for the question. Beautiful question, Nina. Okay, I just wanted to check.
I'd love to speak on expectations too, because they're so important to understand in coaching relationships, but also relationships in general. Um, relationships, the only thing that really prevents them from growing is the expectations. Because the expectation is the assumption that the person should be or do a certain, should be a certain way or should do a certain thing to meet our standard. Our like we basically try and put people into boxes with expectations based on the way we would live for ourselves. We think that's the way they should live. And there's no relationship that can evolve when there's expectations present. Now, this happens in the coaching relationship a lot because there's client expectations and there's also, but sometimes there's coaching expectations. You try not to have expectations, but it's better to create agreements, right? Obviously, the agreement that is created is the foundation of that relationship. The expectations are unexpressed desires for that agreement, but the expectations themselves are the limitation on the client even getting to where they want to go. One of our mentors, Jamie Smart, he said at the beginning of our coach training, he said, one of the things that I wish for you guys is that everything that you want comes true. I wish that. And at the same time, I also wish that something beyond your wildest dreams happens for you. And those two contradict each other. It's really interesting that sometimes what we want isn't necessarily what's going to work for us. Sometimes what we want isn't actually about us. It's about some idea we picked up from somewhere outside of us. It's not authentic to us, right? So that's not going to be good for a person if they get certain things. It's not going to really be in service to them if it's coming from a unconscious personal motive. There's lots of depth that is kind of missed in the coaching conversation when you're the client, because you just can't see those blind spots of your own expectations or your own limitations or your own personal motives. They're self-serving. So that's a really big thing, is that the things that a client wants that they think is going to make them happy or think is going to get them what they want, those are often not anywhere near what they really need. I've seen it time and time again. When clients really have breakthroughs, it's when they give up their expectations on what they think is going to make them happy, because that's just an equation, an external outside-in equation. When I get this, I'll feel this. When I have that, I'll feel happy, or I'll feel satisfied, or I'll feel fulfilled. And they're missing the point of life. That equation keeps them from ever having what they really want. I'm always reminded of this quote that I heard from, I think it's either Paul McCartney or one of the Beatles. And the teacher asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? People said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a engineer. I want to be a scientist. I want to be this. And Paul was sitting in the back of the room quietly, and his teacher said, what about you, Paul? What do you want to be when you grow up? He said, I want to be happy. And his teacher said, I don't think you understood the question. And he responded, I don't think you understand life. Unfortunately, we've been conditioned in society to believe that doing equals being. Doing, then having, then being. That's the equation to being happy. If I do this, then I'll have that, then I'll be happy. That's the equation people set it up as. That's not really how life works. It's being, then doing, then having. That's how the real equation of life unfolds, is you're being the vibration of what you want to manifest. You do what is necessary in the moment, what the moment requires of you, and then you have. It's like the seed. The seed is a state of being, right? It's not active. You plant it in soil and it starts taking action. The outcome is fruit. Right? That's how life really works. The being needs to unfold into doing, and then there's having. So that's why sometimes when people want to do without the right level of being, they don't have. No result. Sometimes when people are too focused on the outcome, the having, they don't do the right things and they're not being the right way. There's no outcome. If you transform at the level of being to the point that you're doing what's necessary in the moment, then the having is the consequence. And anyway, if you can be happy, then you're just playing. You're just playing a game with life in your doing. Sadhguru is a really good example of this. He's, quite an active figure right now in the world, and he is doing a lot of ecological projects and things in the world. That he has a volunteer organization of over 1 million people worldwide. And someone asked him, what's your mission? What's your purpose? And he says, I have none. I'm just playing around. Because when your state of being is already established from within, when you're happy and you don't need something external to make you happy, then you'll do whatever you need to do in the moment. Your doing is not determined, does not determine your way of being. And that's how people live a fulfilled and a beautiful life. That's what we hope people come to see through working with this understanding, through coming back to a place of authentic presence and intuition, is that they'll be able to turn around the equation. Everybody has a life equation. And if you have the wrong equation, doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to get you what you want. So the main thing that we help people do is turn around the equation. We help people change their life equation in a way that actually works for them. Because again, your source of joy and happiness will never find a place of continual fulfillment and satisfaction when your equation is do, have, be. Does that resonate? Can you guys see that in your own life? Just give a thumbs up in the chat or in the emojis if you can see how your life equation at times was like that and it wasn't working because of that. And then think about the times where things just flowed effortlessly, where life just unfolded in front of you. Opportunities emerged, people came and brought things to you. You were in a certain state of being before the doing was required, which brought the having. Yeah, it's true, Tammy. She said, I remember Chris talked about expectations. He said, as a coach, don't dismiss the client's expectations, but take them on a journey to support them to get an insight even bigger than their expectations. It's what the transformational journey is. It's to be able to go beyond your own expectations and discover something insightfully that's more profound that you could be working on. And if we stay stuck in those expectations, and if we stay stuck in that equation, then when I do this or when I have that, then I'll be this, ready to coach, happy, successful, fulfilled, whatever that being is that is at the end of the, on the other side of the equals sign in that equation. those expectations, those are the only reason why a person hasn't learned to be that. So at some point in the coaching journey as a client, there's a moment where, and I've seen this time and time again in my own journey, I woke up and realized how I thought things needed to be was completely wrong. And the only reason why I haven't been getting what I want is because of that expectation of how I think things should be. And I'm creating my life from that misunderstanding, not from a place of what actually works. And I have to give that up if I want to succeed. If I want to get a result, I have to give up my equation of how I'm going to get there and also how life works. And it's tough. It's tough to part ways with the strategy and the plan, because that's the only thing that provides some sense of certainty in a world that's otherwise completely chaotic and confusing. Right? Why do you hire a coach? Because you feel like you need some support, getting clarity, and you feel in a state of confusion about what you're doing and where you're going and what you want to do. So sometimes people build up expectations to create a false sense of certainty, which doesn't allow them to really learn what's needed from the place of confusion. Again, we judge that state of confusion. That's what this whole conversation is about. If you actually chunk up to the reason why people don't do what they want to do, we can list all the beliefs. How about let's do this. This will be fun. List all the beliefs and the reasons why you don't do something that you want to do. Just type in the chat anything that comes to mind. Chris said, I'm not enough. Okay, that's an example. We'll get you started. So if I were to understand the thoughts about what's keeping me back, what's holding me back, what would those be? And then fill in the blank. I don't have the skills and practice at the moment to understand. To be what? Temi said weather. And give me what it keeps you from doing, right? Give me what it keeps you from doing too. I don't have the skills and practice at the moment to, Tamara said, to be a transformational coach. Temi said weather, and how is the weather preventing you from experiencing what you want? What is it that it's preventing you from experiencing what you want? Nina said not good enough because there's no formal qualifications to coach. This one, it's so common. It's absolute crap. I tell you, it's beyond crap that you need a qualification and you need a certificate. It's funny. I did about 12 different modalities, and I did probably 40 different healing workshops and trainings and qualifications and I got certified as a body talk practitioner and advanced body talk practitioner and blah, blah, blah. And healing hypnosis and NLP master and blah, blah, blah. You know, some people go to a course, get a certification, put the certification on the wall, and never, ever speak to a client. Some people go to a course, never take the certificate at the end of it, and do 100 sessions and understand what they're actually talking about and teaching in the course. And you'd never know because they don't advertise it. You know, there's a difference between being a practitioner and being someone who has a qualification. Where does the qualification come from? Does it come from your skill set and your ability to make a difference, or does it come from some external body that has no way to measure whether or not you can, what you do in your sessions? Who has the right to qualify anyone? I'm not watching someone, you know, I don't watch my coaching client sessions and tell them whether or not they're qualified. They go through a training, they get a certification at the end, but that doesn't equate to competence. A qualification in no way equates to competence. As I mentioned, I had a client who just told me after the work we'd done, that she had a client that she spoke to for 10 minutes who had been seeing a trained psychologist for weeks, maybe even months at that time, who said, wow, this 10-minute conversation has been more profound and more helpful than all the time I spent with that psychologist, a trained mental health professional who's gone through a 5-year training in psychology and maybe even a PhD, depending on, I don't know who this person was, but they have all the qualifications. This person that I was working with and helping wasn't even doing coaching as a main profession. They were a Chinese doctor. And in the course of having a conversation with a client, they shared certain things that they picked up from a training that they'd been through with Chris and I. And that was more helpful than a person who's gone through 5 years of training. So what is it that actually works has nothing to do with the qualification. I had a booklet. I had like a photo album because I couldn't keep them on the wall anymore. So I had my office full of qualifications and certificates of all the trainings I had done. Then I had the booklet that I put the rest of them in because I couldn't fit the ones that I had been taking continually onto the wall in my office. And at one point, this did it for me. A PhD psychologist came in to work with me. She was referred to me by a doctor. I used to work with very qualified people. And she told me what was going on for her. And I realized this is just another person who's struggling with their life. They don't have it figured out. And in fact, the way that I understood life to be after having done around 5,000 healing sessions at that time, being a practitioner, I understood how things worked on a different level. And the way that she saw life, I could tell there was a gap in her understanding of how life really worked. It doesn't matter what books you read and how qualified you are and what university you went to and what trainings you took. If you just fundamentally don't understand how life works within yourself, that's it. I mean, it's just not going to work. So a qualification means absolutely zero to me. How I choose people is if I resonate with them. And if when I'm talking to them, they have more depth in the conversation. If they're talking in a way that they're speaking about stuff that I'm quite familiar with, but I don't understand, and I have curiosities that I can see that they have a more depth of understanding than me, then they're potentially a good fit. Potentially. I don't look at qualifications. I don't really care because they don't mean anything. Again, they don't speak to anyone's experience. They don't actually speak to someone's competence. You can have 20 certificates on the wall and you can just be a professional development junkie and you never did a single session. So again, it doesn't mean anything. The qualification of being a coach or not doesn't mean anything. It's a fun little certificate thing we give at the end because people need that for their own, for their own idea that they're qualified. But you know what qualifies me to speak about something to a client? My own experience. Life qualifies me. If I've gotten through something in life that the person is struggling with and I have an answer and something that I figured out something that worked for me, I'm qualified to consult or to coach on that subject. What else can qualify you to be a life coach than your own life experience? What else who can qualify you outside of your own experience? What would you be giving outside of your own experience? Just theories and concepts and blah, 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 right? That's all you can give outside of your own experience. Just beliefs, ideas, nothing of substance, nothing pragmatic. Hypotheticals, right? Well, I saw in this book one time that you could try this with this problem, but I don't know, I never did it. That's not what we want to have people giving away. We don't want people giving out concepts or using techniques that they don't understand the science behind. We coach people to understand the science of how the mind works. and the science of transformation, and to coach from presence and to coach from intuition, because we understand that's the only place that can be authentic for a person to coach from. Everything else is just conceptual, theoretical, philosophical. It doesn't do any real good for a person when they coach from those places. So expectations and qualifications, these are just things that get in the way. And if you look at it, here's the point of what I was doing here. Heidi also just said, I would love to be more playful and fun in my life, but I feel I lost that essence and became very serious. Yeah, you just changed how you approached life a little bit. You know, it's not a big distance between playfulness and seriousness. It's just letting yourself have fun. That's the only difference. Doing the same thing, letting yourself have fun. Anyway, about the qualifications, about this whole conversation I'm trying to have with you guys, about what are the ideas that you think are getting in the way of you having what you want? If you look at them, they're all just judgmental thoughts about who you are. I don't have the skills and practice. That's a self-judgment. I'm not enough. That's a self-judgment. I'm not qualified. That's a self-judgment. I'm too serious. That's a self-judgment. I don't know how to play. That's a self-judgment. You see how everything you're dealing with that limits you from being more is just a self-judgmental thought. You don't have to go through and fine comb every single thought if you see that, if you feel into the quality of judgmental thinking and you can recognize that energy and the fact that you're directing that towards the self, you can eliminate the power that those kinds of thoughts have over you. Because I told you, the person that I worked with, who was a Chinese doctor who spoke to her client for 4 months, she had been battling with that self-judgmental thought of, do I know enough to really be talking about this? And she did, I can assure her. I know, I was working with her. She was ready a lot earlier than she actually took action on it. And this is what happens with a lot of people. People get so caught up in their own self-judgmental thoughts and expectations that they don't just take action and get started. I had the idea to do a podcast for a year and a half. And I come from a background of music and producing songs and writing songs. And I have a good understanding of music production. So it would have been easy for me to start, but I thought, I don't have the right message. I haven't figured out my message and my mission. So I don't know what I'd be talking about. And one day I literally had the idea, you know what, I'm just going to record a 10-minute audio and I'm just going to put it out there. And I did. And then as soon as I recorded the audio, the idea of the podcast name came to mind. I put a little picture together on Canva and I threw it out to my mailing list, and my podcast was created in 10 minutes. It took a year and a half to get to that moment that I was willing to go beyond my self-judgment. That's what happens with most people in coaching. It's like, do you know how you create clients? You just talk to people. No, but I don't know what to say. And, but how do I get them to sign up? Well, you're going to learn a lot if you just talk to people. Well, but first I should probably figure out how to, It's like, guess what? I learned on the job. I'm a practitioner of life. I learn through doing. I learn through personal experience. That's the only way you really know something. So spending so much time getting the right ideas and the right plan together and then never doing it, you don't get anything. You get a lot of philosophies, a lot of theories, and no experience. So there are certain things that coaches do when they're successful. And in order to get to that point and that level of skill, like you said, Tanvir, you just have to do it. Coach someone today from your intuition, from presence. See what it feels like. I'm sure you'll have a lot of insights once you do that, and you'll have a lot of questions that'll come back, that'll resonate true, or you need more clarification on from what we share. But that's the only way you're really going to get something out of this. Otherwise, you're going to walk away with more philosophies and theories that fill up your mind and keep you from being present. Go out there and coach someone without a plan, following your intuition and sharing what comes to mind, and just see what that does. Just see. It doesn't have to be a paid client. You can just ask someone if they want to work, if they want to have a coaching, you're trying something new and you want to experiment. But really give it a go. It's going to be such a profound and impactful experiment for you to take the results off of the coaching, to not have the expectations on yourself or the client, to just show up and see what happens and create. I want to know what you guys have coming to mind in terms of this whole qualification expectations thing. Like, what are your thoughts on it? You know, now that we've talked, and maybe there is still some ideas about like, I still need that. Because I want to flush out any misunderstandings here, because it took me 6 years and a lot of trainings and a lot of sessions to understand it doesn't mean anything. And I understand that if you don't have that experience, it might be hard to believe me. And I'm not asking you to believe anything that I say. I'm just asking you to explore within yourself what's true. And if you have questions that can help clarify that, then please ask them. Whatever intuitively comes to mind, ask them, because that's going to serve the group. Either something landed or me talking equates to brain damage. Did I stroke people out here with this conversation? I was like, I see the flat line here. Brain quiet. Yeah, that happens. That happens when there's no more concepts. Nina, I feel all of the courses, trainings, etc. I've done to date have given me a skill base. Now it's time to put them all together and get out there. Absolutely. Yeah, you're sitting on a gold mine and you got to take it to market to exchange some value. And again, the question is, what is preventing you? What has been? Like, think about that. How long have you been on this journey? How many courses have you taken? How much money have you spent? And still, there's something in the way of you just doing it. So that is really like, it's not that the next training you take will suddenly magically make you ready. You still have this thought process that you're not ready no matter how many trainings you take. That's why it's not working. You know, that's why it hasn't manifested into the kind of business you want. And those ideas must be subtracted. Because here's the thing, probably if those ideas are subtracted, you'll get more done in this year than you have in the past 5. Maybe in a couple months you'll get more done. Because that's how it works, you know? Because your activity will just skyrocket once those ideas fade away. So you need to have the right approach, which is a subtractive approach versus an additive approach. Here's the interesting thing. How we help people become transformational coaches is we help them subtract their ideas that prevent them from being transformational presences. We can't teach that to them as a skill set and as something that they do, because it's not in the doing, it's in the being. I don't want to just make you effective in a coaching session. I want to make you effective at life. Everything that we do here at the Resonance Coaching Academy is designed to make you a more effective human being, which will then make you much better coach, much better parent, much better partner, a much better anything. The problem is you're doing things right now that are getting in the way of you being the best version of yourself. You have self-judgments and you have expectations of yourself and others that just aren't working for you. They're preventing you from doing what's necessary to get the transformation and the results. It's the ego's sneaky way of staying the same. I'll just take 10 more courses and then one of them will click, you know, instead of maybe I got some thinking here that needs to be questioned, and that's the only thing holding me back from taking action. It's the ego's tricky way. You know, it finds ways to get out of the transformation because it's required. Transformation requires an ego death. That can be scary. Nina just said, so yeah, to add on to her comment that she said before, just stuck in the process of what it looks like rather than just putting myself out there. Again, it's that fear of trusting ourselves in the unknown. That's why we cling to ideas and concepts and education, right? We cling to our logic and our sense because we don't feel safe in the unknown. We don't trust that we know what to do with the unknown. We know what to do with ourselves and we know what to do with what shows up. Again, those are subtractive things. Like, there's no course that could ever give you enough knowledge to make you feel certain about something like life, which is very uncertain. The certainty has to come from self, from within. Colton just said, completely agree, came to the same conclusion, didn't learn anything useful about life or health or healing from my doctorate and pharmacy degree. There you go, very qualified person. But the journey I've been on since taught me everything. Absolutely. Degrees and certifications mean nothing. It can only be learned through experiencing and undoing, removing all the crap we've been told and led to believe. That's been my experience too. I mean, you get to a certain point of being educated that you realize being educated, what it means in most people's understanding is memorizing concepts and notions and philosophies. It doesn't mean really perceiving life as it is and knowing how it works. That's not what most people are talking about when they talk about education. But that's what we're talking about here in this conversation, in this coach training. We're talking about education means to draw out truth from within so that you see it for yourself, so that you become more present and perceptive of life. And Nina said, being comfortable with not knowing, but doing it anyway. Absolutely. And I can tell you that that's the journey that many coaches have made going through the work with Chris and I through these trainings, is that you just learn to be yourself. And you know from a deep place that that's enough, that you can show up and share the wisdom coming to mind, and you can actually coach very powerfully from that place. That's the only place that you can really make your infinite difference, because it's not limited to what you know. So, you know, that would be something worth exploring. And Chris and I are happy to chat with you, Nina, or anyone else on this call that, you know, feels they want to go deeper into understanding this. We'd be happy to talk and share about what that might look like. So I think that's it for today. Our time is up, and hope it's been helpful. Hope it's been insightful, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in the future. Any last words, Chris?
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. As Kai said, we're kicking off Project Revolution, which is our 12-month coach training program, transformational coach training program. So yeah, this is the embodiment of what we've been talking about today over a 12-month period. So for those of you that resonate with going deeper into this, jump on a call with us. Just I've dropped a link there for the website, resonanceccoachingacademy.com. From there, you can click the link to book a time to have a chat with either one of us, or send us a message on Facebook, or just email us. I'd be more than happy to have a chat to see if it might be a fit for what you actually need in your journey. It may not be, it may be exactly what you need. So the only way we really get to that is to have a conversation. So if it resonates, please reach out, and we love to connect. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. So good to see so many familiar faces. We love you all. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for sharing this space with us today. Much love, guys.
See you guys. Have a good day. Thanks, Melissa. Nice to have you here.
See you guys.
And everyone else too.